There are places in the world where the boundary between one thing and another becomes thin. You know the ones. The edge of a forest at dusk, where the light fails and the trees begin, and the ordinary rules of the daylit world become, somehow, less certain. The shore of a lake at night, where the water holds the sky's reflection so perfectly that you cannot be sure which is the real sky and which is the echo of it. The moment between sleeping and waking, when you are in both states, and neither. And something that was almost a thought dissolves before you can catch it. These are the thin places. I have been visiting them for as long as I can remember. They are where the stories live, not safely on shelves, not neatly catalogued, but loose and present and alive, the way stories were before anyone decided they needed to be contained. I am not the only one who travels through the thin places. I want you to know that. In all the wandering I have done, in all the traditions I have visited, and the borders I have crossed, I have never been alone at the threshold. There are others, many others, figures who have been tending the crossings for longer than any story I know how to tell, who were there before the stories were old, who will be there long after they have been told for the last time. Some of them guide the living to the dreaming world. Some guide them back. Some guide them further still, to places that have no waking in them. Some stand at entirely different thresholds, not the threshold of sleep or of death, but the first threshold of all, the one the world crosses every single day without anyone remarking on it, the threshold between the light and the dark. The thin places are not all the same thin place. There are many kinds of crossing, many boundaries that grow thin at certain hours, in certain seasons, in certain places where the world has worn down to something almost transparent, and you can feel, standing at it, the presence of what lies on the other side. Over the course of the journeys I'm going to take you on, the ones that begin here, tonight, and continue in the nights to come, I want to introduce you to the figures who tend each kind of threshold, the ones who are here in the dark, the ones who wait at the edge of sleep and guide us through, the ones who stand at the boundary of death and hold the crossing open, the ones who have been doing this since before the world had a name for what they were doing. This is the first of those journeys. Tonight, the threshold is the simplest and the oldest of them all, the edge of the day, the moment when the light goes and the dark arrives, when the sun drops below the horizon and the world transforms into something older, stranger, more inhabited by things that can't be seen. Every culture that has ever existed has stood at this threshold and understood at some level that it was being tended, that something was carrying the darkness in. Tonight, I want you to meet the ones who carry it, the Nightbringers. They are not simply gods associated with the night, or named for it, or connected to it by some mythological accident of lineage. They are the darkness, made of it. Some of them existed before creation, before the sun had been imagined, before light had arrived as a possibility. Some of them ride the night across the sky each evening, leaving physical evidence of their passage that you can touch with your hand the next morning. Some of them hold the night as a sovereign power, a protection, a gift, Some of them look out from it with eyes that see everything the day is too bright to reveal. They come from every corner of the world, from the flat, warm plains of ancient Egypt, where the sky was a goddess whose body arched over the earth and swallowed the sun each night, carrying it safely through the dark hours to be born again at dawn. From the frozen north of the Norse world, where night rode a black horse, and the breath of that horse became the dew you find on every surface in the morning. From the great plains of North America, where darkness was the primordial ground from which everything else was drawn, older than sky, older than earth, older than the sun itself. From the ancient subcontinent of India, where night was invoked as a gentle guardian who kept wolves and thieves at bay, while the sleeping world rested in her care. From the hot jungles of Mexico, where night wore an obsidian mirror in place of a foot and looked out from the stars with eyes that could see every secret any human being had ever kept. Different names, different faces, different stories, but the same vast, ancient dark. I have been thinking, in preparing this for you, about what it means that every culture that has ever existed has given the night a divine face. It is not incidental. It is not merely poetic decoration. When human beings make a god of something, they are doing something very specific. They are saying, this thing is real, and it is more than we can contain in ordinary language, and it deserves to be met on its own terms. They are saying, the dark is not nothing. It is something that acts, that has intention, that is worthy of worship and fear and gratitude and story. And they were right. The dark that is here with you right now is the same dark that fell over ancient Hermopolis when the priests spoke the names of Kuk and Kauket before dawn. It is the same dark that the Vedic sages praised in the oldest hymns we have. It is the same dark that Nótt rides across every night on her black horse, leaving dew in her wake. It has always been here. It will always be here. It has simply, tonight, come to you. So, let your breathing slow, in through the nose, long and easy, out through the mouth, all the way. Let the sounds of the living world grow distant. We begin at the very beginning, before the world existed, before light had been invented, in the place where the Egyptian theologians placed the oldest things they could imagine, the primordial waters and the darkness that lay upon them. We begin before the beginning, not before the beginning of history, or of civilization, or of the gods that most people know, before all of that, before Ra sailed his solar boat across the sky, before Isis and Osiris were born, before the Nile had a name, before the land of Egypt was anything more than the idea of land, floating somewhere in the mind of a universe that had not yet decided to become itself. We begin in the dark. There is a city in ancient Egypt that most people have never heard of. The Egyptians called it Kamunu, the city of 8. The Greeks, when they arrived centuries later, called it Hermopolis. It sat on the west bank of the Nile in Middle Egypt, in a landscape of flat agricultural land and enormous sky. And in this city, the priests had developed a creation story unlike anything else in the Egyptian world. Most Egyptian creation myths begin with a single supreme god, Ra, or Atum, or Ptah, who wills the world into being through speech or thought or solitary act. They are stories of divine authority, of one great power imposing order on chaos. The Hermopolitan story does not begin like that at all. It begins with 8 primordial forces, 4 male and female pairs, who together embodied everything that existed before existence. Not gods in the way the Egyptians usually understood gods. Not beings with temples and festivals and human-shaped desires. Something more fundamental than that. The conditions of the universe before the universe had conditions. The qualities of the void before the void had been named. The Greeks would call them the Ogdoad, the Eight. The Egyptians themselves understood them as the very texture of the chaos that preceded creation. Nun and Naunet, the primordial waters, the formless ocean that filled all space before space was organized. Amun and Amunet, the hidden, the invisible, the wind that moves without being seen. Ha and Hauhe, the infinite and the boundless, the quality of having no edges, no end, no definition. And Kuk and Kauket, the darkness. Kuk, depicted as a frog, or as a frog-headed man, the frog being, in Egyptian symbolism, a creature of the inundation, the muddy waters that receded each year to reveal the fertile black soil of creation. His name in the ancient Egyptian language is simply Kekadabos, darkness. The word itself has a quality of absence about it, a consonant cluster without a comfortable vowel, like something pressed into clay without being quite finished. Kauket, his female counterpart, was depicted as a snake or a snake-headed woman. Her name is the feminine form of his. They were understood not as two separate beings, but as a single principle, given two faces. The darkness that preceded everything, seen from two directions at once. She was called the bringer in of night. He was called the bringer in of the day that follows, because you cannot have one without the other. And these primordial forces, the Egyptians understood, always travel in pairs. I want to stay here for a moment, because this is a conception of darkness that I find extraordinary. In many traditions, including some you may have grown up with, darkness is the enemy of light. It is what light overcomes. It is the absence, the negative, the nothing that waits to be filled. But not here. Here, the darkness is not the enemy of creation. It is the ground of creation. It is the condition under which everything becomes possible. Kuk and Kauket do not oppose Ra, the sun god. They are part of what makes Ra possible. They are the dark soil in which the seed of the world was planted. The 8 primordial forces dwell together in the primordial waters, the undifferentiated chaos that preceded the ordered universe. And from this state, from this patient, formless dark, the creation myth tells us that something miraculous emerged, a mound, rising from the waters, the first solid thing, the first place. And on that mound, or from the waters nearby, a lotus flower opened. Hold that image for a moment. The lotus is one of the most perfect things in nature, a flower of extraordinary beauty and symmetry, rising from mud and stagnant water, opening each morning and closing each night. The Egyptians observed this and understood it as a kind of theology. The lotus does not fight the mud it grows in. It uses the mud. It rises from the darkness, not in spite of it, but through it, carrying the darkness in its roots while offering its face to the light. And from the lotus, in the Hermopolitan creation, came the sun, Ra, or the scarab-headed sun god Khepri, emerging from the opening flower, the first light in all the universe, blinking into existence in the middle of the infinite dark, supported by the very waters and darkness that might seem to be its opposite. After that first rising, the 8 primordial forces stepped back. Their work was done, not because they had been defeated, but because the world they had made possible had been made. They retreated to the underworld, where they continued to exist not as rulers or active gods, but as the substrate, the foundation, the dark beneath the world that makes the world's light possible. Pharaohs, well into the Roman period, centuries after Egypt had been conquered and reconquered, after the old temples had been half forgotten and the hieroglyphs were losing their readers, still made pilgrimages to the temple at Medinet Habu once every 10 years to pay homage to the Ogdoad, to acknowledge, in a world full of blazing sun and elaborate ritual and the roar of civilization, that underneath all of it, underneath everything, there was still the dark from which it all arose, that Kuk and Kauket were still there, in the depth of things, patient and vast and present. They are still there now, the bringers in of night, the ones without whom the day would have nothing to be born from. We travel now to ancient Greece, to a creation story that is in some ways startlingly similar to the Egyptian one, and in other ways entirely its own. The Greek creation begins with chaos, not chaos in the sense of disorder or noise or confusion. The Greek word chaos means something closer to a gap, a void, the gaping emptiness that existed before the world existed, before even the gods who would make the world existed, infinite, dark, without definition. From chaos came two children, Nyx, the night, and Erebus, the darkness. Erebus, his name is used in two ways in the ancient text, and the double usage is itself revealing. Erebus is a god, a person, a presence, a force with a face. But Erebus is also a place, the deep darkness that fills the hollows of the earth, the darkness of the underworld, the particular quality of dark that exists in caves and deep waters, and the space between the living world and the land of the dead. He is both the god and the thing the god is made of, both the noun and the name. This is one of the qualities that distinguishes the primordial Greek deities from the more familiar Olympians. Zeus and Athena and Apollo are gods who have personalities and stories and rivalries and loves. They are characterful, complex, almost uncomfortably human in their motivations. But Erebus is not like that. Erebus is a force that has been given a face, a darkness that has been given a name, because human beings cannot fully sit with something so vast without offering it a shape. Hesiod, the Greek poet who gave us our most complete account of these earliest beings, tells us that from the union of Erebus and Nyx, darkness and night, brother and sister, consort and complement, came two remarkable children. Ether, the bright upper air, the luminous sky above the clouds, the air that the gods themselves breathe, and Hemera, the day. Think about that for a moment. Darkness and night, together, gave birth to light and day. The Greek creation story does not place light and darkness in opposition. It makes them family. It makes daylight the child of the dark, something that emerged from darkness, the way all things emerge from their opposites, the way dawn comes from night, the way the lotus came from the primordial waters. Darkness is not the absence of light. Light is what happens when darkness opens itself. There is an image in the ancient sources that I return to often, and that I want you to hold as you settle towards sleep. Erebus, the god, the darkness, the deep places, fills the hollows of the earth. Not all darkness, not all dark places, but specifically the underground, the caverns, the roots of mountains, the deep cracks in the rock that go down and down without reaching bottom. The places where light has never been and will never be. He lives there, has always lived there, filling those spaces the way water fills a vessel, And each evening, when Nyx draws her veil across the sky and the world grows dark, the ancient sources tell us she is drawing Erebus up and out, pulling the underground darkness into the visible world, wearing it the way a queen wears a cloak. She and Erebus are inseparable. She is the night. He is the darkness the night is made of. She is the visible, moving, sky-spanning force. He is the deep, still source she draws from. He is always there. He is the ground. We walk over him every day without knowing it. We look at sunlit fields and bright rooms, and the specific quality of midday light that makes the world seem entirely knowable and present, and we don't think about what is underneath, about the dark that starts just below the surface of things, about the caves and deep roots and the ancient underground where light has never arrived. But every night, when Nyx comes, she draws him up, and we remember. Or rather, something in us remembers, even if we have no name for what it is that we're remembering. The particular quality of the dark that falls is not simply the absence of the sun. It is something that comes from the earth itself. Something old. Something that was here before the sun existed. Aristophanes, the Greek playwright, imagined the very beginning of things in a passage of extraordinary beauty. Chaos, and night, and Erebus, and Tartarus, the four first things. And then, in the bosom of the infinite deep of Erebus, night laid a germless egg, and from the egg, after ages had passed, love hatched. Love, born from the egg that night laid in the darkness of Erebus. Even in that oldest imagining, even before there was a world, the darkness was not barren. It was gestating. It is always gestating. Of all the Nightbringers I will introduce to you tonight, she is the one I keep returning to. Nyx, the Greek goddess of the night, daughter of chaos, sister and consort of Erebus, one of the oldest divine beings in any mythology. And this is the thing that stops you when you first encounter it. A figure so powerful that even Zeus, the king of the gods, was afraid of her. This is not a minor detail. Zeus, in the Greek imagination, was the supreme authority of the cosmos. He had overthrown his own father. He had defeated the Titans. He wielded thunder and lightning and the absolute weight of divine law. He was, in any ordinary accounting, the most powerful being in existence. But there is a moment in Homer's Iliad, one of the oldest written works in the Western tradition, where Hera wants to put Zeus to sleep, and she enlists Hypnos, the god of sleep, to help her. Hypnos is reluctant. He reminds her that he once did this before, and when Zeus woke and discovered what had happened, he was furious. He chased Hypnos across the heavens, but Hypnos had been saved. He had fled to his mother, to Nyx, and Zeus, arriving at her door, had stopped. I reached her in my flight, says Hypnos, and Zeus let be, though he was angry, in awe of doing anything to swift night's displeasure. Zeus, the king of everything, stood at the door of the goddess of night and did not knock, because she is older than him. She's older than the Olympians, older than the Titans, older than almost everything. She was there before the world was ordered. And the ordered world, for all its thunderbolts and divine authority, remembers at some level that it exists within something much larger than itself. When Nyx goes out into the world, The ancient poets describe her appearance with a care that suggests they were trying to capture something genuinely difficult to capture in words. She rides a chariot. All of her is cloaked in black, deep, absolute, the black of the sky on a night with no moon. But she is not simply dark. She is dark and studded with light. She wears a veil of stars, or she trails them behind her, or they follow in her wake like attendants. Some depictions crown her with an aureole of dark mists. Some make her winged, so that the night is not something that rolls across the sky, but something that flies. Vast, silent, moving over the world with the particular efficiency of something that has been doing this forever and needs no more effort than a bird needs to stay aloft. She is beautiful in the way that vast things are beautiful. Not softly, not gently, with the beauty of something that does not need your approval. That was beautiful before there was anyone to observe it, and will be beautiful long after. She lives in Tartarus, the deepest part of the underworld, the primordial pit at the root of everything. And there she shares a palace with her daughter, Hemera, the Day. They never meet. As Nyx leaves the palace to begin her journey across the sky, Hemera is returning from hers. As Hemera goes out into the world to scatter the night, Nyx comes home to rest. They pass each other on the threshold, always the threshold, always just that. And they never share the same space, the same house, the same door, a perpetual, almost meeting that never quite happens. This image moves me every time I return to it. Day and night, mother and daughter, living in the same home, at the edge of everything, divided only by the eternal alternation of their natures. Each knowing the other is always just behind her, always just ahead, always the other side of the door. Hesiod describes the place where they cross as a great threshold at the edge of the world, a cosmic doorway through which night goes out as day comes in, and day goes out as night comes in, one pouring through as the other withdraws. They have been doing this for as long as there has been a world to do it in. Perhaps they have grown so accustomed to it that the crossing requires no acknowledgement. The door simply opens and closes, the most reliable rhythm in existence. And at the threshold, for just one brief, unmeasurable moment, both of them are present. Two halves of the world's great alternation, touching at the hinge. This is the threshold that Nyx tends, not as a guard who keeps things out, but as the force whose very movement creates the crossing, whose departure is what makes the morning possible, and whose return is what makes the night, and her children. This is where Nyx becomes something more than simply the goddess of a particular time of day. This is where you begin to understand the scale of what she actually is. From her union with Erebus, she gave birth to Ether, the luminous upper air, and Hemera, the day, the light and the day itself, born from the union of darkness and night, but from herself alone, without a consort, without a partner, simply by the sheer generative power of the primordial night. She gave birth to an extraordinary brood, Hypnos, sleep, her son, Thanatos, death, his twin brother, the two of them so closely related that ancient artists depicted them as identical, one bearing a white poppy, one a black, distinguishable only by the shade of flower they carried. Oneros, dreams, the whole world of dreams, arising from the darkness of night. The Moirai, the three fates, Clotho, who spins the thread of each life, Lachesis, who measures it, Atropos, who cuts it, the destiny of every living being, born from the night. Nemesis, divine retribution, the righting of wrongs, the force that ensures no excessive fortune goes unchecked. Eris, strife. Geras, old age. Moises, misery. Moros, doom. Philotes, affection, the tenderness that opens in the dark between people who trust each other enough to lower their guard. Apathy, deception, because the dark is where things are not always as they appear. Sleep and death and fate and love and time and grief and consequence. Everything that is most serious in human life is her child. The night does not simply cover the world. It generates what the world must reckon with. It might seem, reading that list, that Nyx is a figure of darkness in the most negative sense. That her children are a catalogue of everything painful and terrifying about human life. But I want to offer a different reading. These are not her curses. They are her contents. The night contains all of these things. It is the hour when the dying often let go, the hour when grief is heaviest, when fears are loudest, when the fates seem most palpable. But it is also the hour of sleep and dreams, of Hypnos, who comes as a mercy, of the unconscious world that is as real as the waking one, and in many ways more honest. Nyx mothers everything that lives and moves in the dark, the peaceful and the terrifying alike. She does not choose which of her children arrive at your bedside on a given night. She simply opens the door. She has been opening the door for as long as there has been a night to open it into. And Zeus, the king of everything, stands outside it and does not knock. We travel now very far from ancient Greece and Egypt, across the Atlantic, across the vast interior of North America, to the Great Plains, to the rolling grasslands that stretch between the Missouri River and the Rocky Mountains, where the sky is enormous and the horizon is far, and the buffalo moved in their thousands before they didn't anymore, to the world of the Lakota people, the Teton Sioux, whose creation stories were carried in oral tradition for thousands of years before anyone wrote them down, and who gave the darkness a name that I want to say slowly, carefully, with the respect it deserves. Hun, a single syllable, the spirit of darkness. In the Lakota creation, the universe begins not with a god who decides to make something, but with a state, a condition, the condition that existed before any decision had been made, before any god had separated itself from anything else. The texts describe it simply. Before creation, there was Wakantanka, the great mystery, the great spirit, existing within a great emptiness that was itself a thing. That emptiness was Han, darkness, existing before sky, before earth, before water, before rock, before fire, before any of the elements that would eventually compose the world. Evidently pre-existent to all things, the sources say, with the particular matter-of-factness of someone describing something so obvious it barely needs explaining. Han was simply there, the way darkness is always simply there, underneath everything, waiting. What happened next in the Lakota creation is a story of extraordinary beauty. From within Han, from within this primordial darkness, Inyan, the rock, came into being, the first solid thing, the first boundary between something and nothing. Inyan wanted to exercise his powers, wanted to create, and so he made Maka, the earth, as part of himself. But the act of creation cost him. His blood poured out and became the waters. He shrank, he hardened, he lost much of his power. The earth was made, but it was cold and dark and barren, still wrapped in Han, still without light. And Maka complained. She went to Scan, the sky, and said, "It is too cold. It is too dark. I cannot thrive like this." And so Scan, understanding what needed to be done, understanding that the world could not sustain itself in pure darkness, banished Han. He took the primordial darkness and pressed it down beneath the earth. He sent it underground, and in its place, he created An, the spirit of light, the sourceless reddish glow of dawn. And then we, the sun, to warm everything. But the earth became too hot. Maka complained again, and so arrangements were made. Han would not stay banished forever. Han and Amp would follow each other around the world, each in turn going underground while the other was present. The darkness retreating when the light came, the light retreating when the darkness returned. Not one defeating the other, not one being better than the other. Simply two primordial forces in permanent, necessary alternation. This is why the Lakota understood. There is day and there is night. Not because light conquered darkness, but because the world could not survive having only one. One was not destroyed. One was integrated. The darkness that existed before everything was not eliminated when the sun was made. It was given its proper place, its proper time, its proper role in the ongoing life of the world. I want to sit with this for a moment because it feels important. In the Lakota understanding, darkness is not a problem to be solved. It is not a phase to be overcome. It is not the enemy of warmth and life and the good things the sun brings. It is a necessity. It is the other breath. The world without Han would be too hot, too bright, too relentless. A world that never rested, never cooled, never gave anything the darkness it needed to restore itself. Han comes back every evening, not as an intruder, but as a returning resident. He was banished underground, but the arrangement that was made brought him back. He cycles back every 24 hours, with the reliability of something that has been doing this for as long as the world has existed, which is to say, forever. There is something deeply consoling in this, lying in the dark. The darkness that is here with you right now is the oldest thing in the Lakota universe. Older than sky, older than earth, older than sun, older than every beautiful and terrible thing that fills the world. It was here before any of it. It knows how to hold what needs to be held in the dark hours. It has been doing this since before the world had anything that needed holding. It knows what it's doing. It always has. We return to Egypt now, but to a completely different image of the dark. If Kuk and Kauket were the darkness before creation, formless, foundational, abstract, then the goddess I want to introduce you to now is darkness made gloriously, sensuously, overwhelmingly body. Her name is Nótt, and she is the sky. Not a goddess who rules the sky, not a goddess who lives in the sky. The sky itself, arching over the earth from horizon to horizon, her fingers touching one cardinal point of the compass, and her toes another. Her body stretched in a great arc above the world, star-covered, luminous, vast beyond any ordinary reckoning of vastness. When the ancient Egyptians looked up at the night sky, they were looking at her body. The stars that scattered across the darkness were adorning her skin. The Milky Way was, in some tellings, her backbone, the structural ridge of the sky. She was not behind the sky, She was not in the sky. She was the sky. The mythology of Nótt is rich and strange, and full of the kind of cosmic domesticity that the Egyptians excelled at. The gods of Egypt are not remote or incomprehensible. They are grand and elemental, and also somehow familiar. Nótt was the daughter of Shu, the god of air, and Tefnut, the goddess of moisture. She was married to her brother Geb, the earth god, and the two of them were so inseparable, so entwined, that no space existed between them. The sky lay against the earth. Nothing could grow between them. Life as we know it could not exist. And so their father Shu stepped in. He lifted Nótt above Geb, separating them. He placed himself between them, held the sky up from the earth. And in that space, in that gap between ground and sky that a father's body had created, the world as we know it became possible. The air, the light, the room for living things to exist. But Nótt and Geb still reach for each other. She arches toward him. He stretches his arms toward her. The hills and mountains of the earth are where Geb's body strains upward to touch his wife. The low places are where he has given up, momentarily, and dropped back. And every evening, in some tellings, Nótt descends. She comes down to earth to be with Geb in the dark. And the darkness of night is the result, the shadow of her approach, the sky folding itself closer to the earth. In the morning she rises again, and day returns. But her most profound story, the one that was painted on the ceilings of tombs and temples for 3,000 years, is this. Every evening, as the sun god Ra travels toward the western horizon, Nótt swallows him. The sun disappears into her mouth. It travels through her body during the night, through the vast, dark interior of the sky goddess. Along the path you can trace if you lie on your back and follow the stars. And in the morning, Nótt gives birth to him again. The sun is reborn at dawn from her body, red and wet and new, the way all newborn things are red and wet and new. And then the cycle begins again. Night, in this vision, is not the absence of the sun. It is the sun's journey through a divine body. The darkness of the night sky is not empty space. It is the inside of Nótt, warm, intimate, alive. The sun is not lost during the night. It is held. When you look up at the night sky and see the stars scattered across the dark, the ancient Egyptians would have told you, you are looking at the skin of a goddess, and somewhere inside her, the sun is traveling. Somewhere in that warm interior darkness, tomorrow is already in preparation. The light is not gone. It is being carried. The ancient Egyptians painted Nótt on the underside of sarcophagus lids. Think about what this means. When a person was laid out in their coffin, in the moment of their burial, in the moment when they crossed from the world of the living into whatever came next, they looked up and saw her, this goddess, arching over them, star-covered, vast, the same body that carried the sun through the darkness, the same embrace. They were being placed in the position of the sun. They were being laid in the dark of Nótt's interior, the way the sun was laid in it each evening, and the promise encoded in that image, painted in lapis and gold by artists who understood exactly what they were doing, was this: as the sun is reborn each morning, so will you be. The night is the passage. The darkness is not the end. It is the inside of the one who carries you toward the morning. I think about this sometimes, lying in the dark. The sky out there, right now, above wherever you are. arching from horizon to horizon, luminous with stars that are themselves just the visible surface of something immeasurably deep. Nut, stretching herself across the world, holding the whole thing, holding you. The way she has held every person who has ever looked up at the night sky and felt, without quite knowing why, that the dark above them was not simply empty. We travel north now, to a world very different from the warm Nile Delta and the sun-drenched plains of Greece. We are in the Norse world, the cold world, the world of long winters and short summers, and a cosmology shaped by the particular psychology of people who knew that the darkness would come and stay for months, who had to find a way to understand that and live with it and not be crushed by it. The Norse were not people who pretended the dark was gentle. They knew what the dark contained. They named the monsters that lived in it. They understood that winter was dangerous and that the world could end, not metaphorically, but actually, cosmically, in a final darkness called Ragnarok. And yet, they also gave the night a face that is, to me, one of the most unexpectedly beautiful images in all of world mythology. Her name is Nótt. The Norse word for night is itself. She is night personified, not a goddess who rules over night from somewhere else, but night itself given form and genealogy and a horse to ride. The sources tell us that Nótt was the daughter of a Jötun, a giant from the realm of Jötunheimr. She was described as black and swarthy, as dark as the thing she embodied. And she had, across the long span of her existence, 3 marriages. Her first husband gave her a son named Order, prosperity, abundance, something good born from the dark. Her second husband gave her a daughter named Jörd, the earth itself, the personified ground, who would later become the mother of Thor. Her third husband was Dellinger, the god of the dawn. And from that marriage, from the union of night and dawn, came Dag, the day. Think about that family tree. Night marries dawn and produces day. The Norse, like the Greeks with Nyx and Erebus, giving birth to Hemera, could not imagine the day being born from anywhere except the night. Day is the child of night. Light is what darkness produces when it opens itself at the right angle. The morning arrives not in spite of the night, but because of it, through it, as its offspring. Odin himself, the All-Father, the one-eyed god of wisdom who hung on the world tree for 9 days to gain knowledge of the runes, placed Nótt and her son, Daga, in the sky. He gave them each a chariot and a horse, and set them riding around the earth, following each other in an eternal circle, every 24 hours, never catching up. Night always ahead of day, day always chasing night. The whole vast sky their racetrack, mother and son in perpetual pursuit. She who is the darkness always just ahead of he who is the light. He who is the brightness always just behind her. And the horizon, that line where the sky meets the earth. The horizon is where they are always almost meeting. I want to stay with the relationship between Nótt and Daga for a moment, because I think it contains something important that is easy to pass over. The day comes from the night the way a child comes from a mother. It emerges from the darkness shaped by it, carrying something of it. In so many traditions, night and day are paired as opposites, as lovers or as adversaries, as husband and wife, or as ancient enemies. The eternal masculine and feminine, pushing and pulling at each other across the hours. But in the Norse tradition, The day is not the night's opposite or rival. He is her son. He came from her. Every dawn is a birth. Every morning, light is what the night produced in the dark hours, offered up to the world as Nótt's horse completes its circuit and gives way to the horse of the day. The shining is what the darkness made, the brightness that scatters across the sky each morning, that warms the grass and opens the flowers and gives the waking world its colour. That brightness is Nótt's child, born of her darkness, still carrying in its warmth something of the cold night that produced it. Nótt's horse is named Hrimfaxi, Frostmane. And here is the detail that I think about more than almost any other in all of these night myths. The foam from Hrimfaxi's bit, as Nótt rides through the sky, falls to earth, and becomes the morning dew. Sit with that. Every morning, when you step outside into the early light, when you notice the grass wet and glistening, the leaves beaded with moisture, the windscreen of a car left outside overnight, covered in tiny, perfect drops, you are seeing the evidence of Nótt's passage, the residue of her ride through the dark above you. She was here. She moved through the sky while you were sleeping. Her horse breathed hard from the effort of carrying the night across the world, and the foam from the bit fell. And this is where it landed, on the grass outside your door, on the spider's web stretched between the fence posts, on every surface the night touched. This is the physical proof that the night happened, that it was a presence and not just an absence, that something moved through the sky above your sleeping body with the solidity and effort of a horse running, and left behind it, on every morning of every day that has ever existed, the small, cold, beautiful evidence of its passing. I find this image genuinely moving in a way I struggle to fully articulate. It is partly the intimacy of it, that the vast cosmic passage of the night leaves something as small and specific and perfect as a dewdrop, that the distance between the galactic and the domestic, between the divine ride across the sky and the drop of water on the morning leaf, is not actually very far at all. And it is partly the idea that the night signs its name, that every morning, before anything else happens, before the world gets busy and loud, there is a brief window when you can read the evidence of what was here in the dark, when the world is wet with the night's passage, and you can, if you look, see where it's been. Nótt was grandmother to Thor, the thunder god, the one whose hammer protects the world from chaos. The night that rides above us every evening is, in the Norse reckoning, related to the force that keeps the world safe. The dark and the protective thunder, grandmother and grandchild. The night, in the Norse world, is not simply beautiful, it is family. We travel now to ancient India, to a world of enormous antiquity and extraordinary sophistication, where the oldest surviving literature on Earth was composed by sages who sat in the dark and listened very carefully to what the universe was telling them. The Rig Veda, one of the 4 Vedas, the foundational sacred texts of the Hindu tradition, was composed somewhere between 1500 and 1200 BCE, and possibly drawing on oral traditions much older than that. It is a collection of hymns addressed to the various forces and deities that the Vedic sages experienced as present and alive in the world. Hymns to Agni, the fire, who was also the god of the sacrificial flame and the hearth. Hymns to Indra, the storm king, who split mountains with his thunderbolt and released the rivers. Hymns to Varuna, the guardian of cosmic order. Hymns to Ushas, the dawn. And one hymn, just one, tucked into the 10th and final book of the Rig Veda, addressed to the night. Her name is Ratri. The hymn is called the Ratri Sukta, the night hymn, and it is one of the oldest prayers to the darkness that human beings have preserved. The sage who composed it, tradition tells us, was named Kushika Saubara. He sat in the dark, perhaps in the forests of the Indus Valley, perhaps on the edge of a settlement, listening to the sounds of the sleeping world. And he looked at the night, and he saw, with the clarity of someone who has been trained to look at things very carefully, what the night actually was. Not a threat, not an absence, not a thing to be endured until the morning. A goddess, present, protective, worthy of address. And he wrote her a hymn. The hymn addresses her directly, in the second person, the way you address someone you know and trust. Not a prayer of supplication from a position of fear, not a cry into the dark from someone terrified of what the dark contains. Something closer to a greeting, an acknowledgement. The way you might speak to a person who comes every evening and whose coming you have learned, over a long time, to rely on and to be grateful for. The Ratri Sukta begins by describing Ratri's arrival, and the description is one of the most beautiful in the Rig Veda. She comes, the hymn says, with her eyes, her many eyes, because the stars, all of them, everyone scattered across the darkness from horizon to horizon, are her eyes. She looks down from everywhere at once. There is no corner of the night that is outside her gaze, no creature sleeping in the dark that is not seen by at least one of her 1,000 eyes. She spreads herself across the world, the way a blanket is spread over someone sleeping, covering everything, from the high places to the low, from the open plains to the forested hillsides, every settlement, every path, every creature that is trying to rest. She comes as the guardian comes. Now, and this is where the hymn becomes extraordinary, the sage begins to list the dangers of the night. The wolves move in the darkness, the real wolves, the ones that circle the edges of a settlement in the small hours, waiting for something to separate from the herd. The thieves move in the darkness, the ones who know that the dark is cover, that a sleeping household is a vulnerable household. The snake moves in the darkness, the actual snake, the one you can't see until your foot has already found it. The tiger, the creature with eyes that reflect the firelight before you can make out its shape. The sage does not minimize these things. He doesn't pretend the night is safe in the way that we sometimes, from the comfort of our walled and lit world, might pretend it is safe. The night he is addressing was genuinely dangerous. People died in the dark in ways that the daylight made unlikely. The Vedic world was not a world of walls and streetlights. It was a world where the dark was full of things that could kill you, and where the coming of morning was not simply beautiful, but an actual relief. And yet, the hymn does not ask Ratri to remove these dangers. It asks her to hold the worshipper through them, to keep him safe, not by eliminating the dark and its contents, but by standing watch over him while he is in it, to be the one presence, vast and vigilant, between the sleeping human and everything that moves in the night. Let us be your children, the sage writes. Keep us, as the birds settle in a tree for the night, folding their wings tucking their heads, trusting the branch to hold them until morning. So let us settle in you. The tree does not make the forest safe, but it holds the bird. Ratri does not make the night safe, but she holds the sleeping. In the Vedic tradition, Ratri has a sister. Her name is Ushas, the dawn. And in the hymns she is described as a radiant young woman, driving her red chariot across the sky, scattering the darkness, waking the world. She and Ratri are described together, the way only things that are truly inseparable are described together, as the two divine sisters who follow each other across the heavens in an eternal alternation that is also the heartbeat of the world. Neither overcomes the other. Each gives birth to the other. Ratri retreats and Ushas arises. Ushas fades and Ratri returns. They are, the Vedic sages said, the alternating breaths of the cosmos, the in-breath and the out-breath, the repose and the awakening. And between them, they hold everything. Ratri is not merely the absence of Ushas. She is her own thing, her own power, her own tenderness, her own claim on the world's gratitude. The dawn is radiant and active, scattering the dark, waking the birds and the farmers and the fires. Ratri is still. She asks nothing except that you trust her. She does not announce herself. She simply comes and spreads herself across the world and keeps watch. And in the morning, when Ushas arrives, Ratri withdraws, not defeated, not diminished, simply completing her part of the rhythm that holds the world in its pulse. There is a quality to Ratri that is different from Nyx and Han and Kuk. She is tender in a way they are not. She is specifically oriented toward the sleeping world, toward the vulnerable creatures in it, toward the ones who need to be kept safe, while they cannot keep themselves safe. She is the goddess of the hours when you are most defenseless, when your eyes are closed and your consciousness has released its grip on the waking world. And she is specifically the one who stands watch. The one hymn dedicated to her in the oldest surviving literature on earth is a prayer of trust, not terror, not awe, not the fear that Tezcatlipoca demands, or the respect that Nyx commands. The one hymn dedicated to her in the oldest surviving literature on earth is a prayer of trust, not terror, not awe, not the fear that Tezcatlipoca demands, or the respect that Nyx commands. Trust. Here I am. I am in your dark. Keep me. We travel now to a tradition that most people in the English-speaking world have never encountered, to Lithuania. To understand Breksta, you first need to understand the world she comes from and the extraordinary fragility of that world's survival. Lithuania sits on the eastern shore of the Baltic Sea, in a landscape of deep forests and amber coastlines, of slow rivers and flat farmland and sky that goes on and on. It is a small country with a long and complicated history, conquered and partitioned and occupied and fought over more than once by forces much larger than itself. It was also, remarkably, the last country in Europe to convert to Christianity, not until 1387. For centuries after the rest of Europe had adopted the new faith, Lithuania maintained its ancient polytheistic religion, its sacred fires and sacred groves, its sky gods and earth goddesses, its elaborate understanding of the world as alive and divine in every part. And then, in 1387, the conversion happened, and the tradition that had persisted for thousands of years began to be dismantled. what survived is fragmentary. Much of what we have comes from medieval Christian chronicles written by foreigners, Polish and German missionaries, and historians who considered Lithuanian paganism to be superstition at best and devil worship at worst. They recorded it with the condescending bewilderment of people documenting something they found primitive. They got names wrong, confused deities with each other, imposed Christian categories on a belief system that had entirely different categories. It is like trying to understand a painting from a dismissive description written by someone who had no interest in art and disliked the subject matter. And yet, from the fragments, something remarkable survives. A goddess named Breksta. Her name comes from the Lithuanian word Breksta, the moment when darkness begins. Not the deep dark of midnight, not the full night already settled over the world, but the threshold, the twilight, the deepening, the particular quality of late evening when the day hasn't quite let go and the night hasn't quite arrived. She is part of a trinity of sky goddesses who together govern the full arc of light and dark across each day. Nótt, the goddess of the morning star. Venus as the dawn herald, the one who kindles the fire of the sun each morning, who prepares the way for the day. She is the morning's handmaiden, the one who makes ready. Ratri, the goddess of the evening star. Venus as the evening herald, who tends the sun's bed at the close of day, who makes the preparations for the night. She is the evening's welcome, the one who receives. And Breksta, who stands between them in the cycle, who is neither morning nor evening exactly, but the deepening, the transition, the one who takes the evening's hand and walks it all the way into night, who holds the watch from sunset to sunrise, keeping the world safe during the hours when the sun is away. Think about what this means. 3 goddesses, not one, tending the great daily arc of light and dark. 3 different thresholds being watched by 3 different presences. The Lithuanian tradition did not see the cycle of day and night as a single undivided thing, but as a sequence of transitions. Each one tended, each one held. The ending of day and the beginning of evening. Ratri, the deepening of evening into full night. Breksta, the ending of night and the beginning of dawn. Nótt, every transition, every crossing, watched. Breksta is also, crucially, the goddess of dreams. And this is the doubling that I find most profound about her. She tends the threshold between day and night in the world outside, and simultaneously tends the threshold between waking and dreaming in the world inside. She is the guardian of both crossings at once, the one that happens in the sky and the one that happens in the mind. This makes her, of all the Nightbringers, the one most specifically present in the experience you are having right now, because the threshold between waking and dreaming is where you are, at this moment, on the edge of it, 1 foot in the waking world, 1 foot in the other. She is here for that crossing, every evening, as the light changes, as the sky moves through its extraordinary sequence of gold and orange and rose and purple and deep blue, and then the first faint appearance of stars. There is a moment you have probably felt without naming. The moment when the day is definitively over. When the transition has happened. When the night is no longer coming, but here. It is a specific, identifiable moment, different for every evening depending on the season and the weather, and the particular quality of that day's light. Sometimes it arrives suddenly, like a door closing. Sometimes it comes gradually, a slow settling. But there is always a moment. In the Lithuanian imagination, that moment was tended. Someone was present at it. Someone was watching the crossing, making sure it happened safely, making sure the world moved from one state to the other with the care that any crossing deserves. Breksta is, of all the Nightbringers, perhaps the most intimate, not the most powerful. That is Nyx, without question. Not the most ancient, that is Kuk or Han. Not the most terrifying, that is Tezcatlipoca, who we will come to. But the most present, the most specifically here. She is the one who came when the day ended. She is the one who stayed. She is still here. We end tonight in Mexico. In the world of the Aztec, the Mexica, a civilization of extraordinary complexity and ferocity and beauty that flourished in the highlands of Central America until the Spanish arrived in the 16th century and destroyed much of what had taken centuries to build. The Aztec relationship with night was unlike anything we have encountered in tonight's journey. It was not gentle. It was not protective in the way Ratri is protective. It was not tender like Breksta. It was not cosmic and abstract like Kuk, or cosmologically beautiful like Nótt. The Aztec night was sovereign, and it was alive with forces that demanded attention. The Aztec calendar, one of the most sophisticated timekeeping systems ever devised by any civilization on Earth, was not one calendar, but two running simultaneously. The solar calendar of 365 days, tracking the agricultural year, and the sacred ritual calendar of 260 days, the Tonopawali, used for divination, ceremony, and the naming of children. Every day in this 260-day cycle had its own divine character, its own omens, its own presiding deity, and every night had one too. 9 deities cycling endlessly through the night, each governing every 9th night in sequence. The Yohualtakutin, the lords of the night, 9 different qualities of darkness, 9 different presences moving through the world after the sun went down. Think about what this means for how the Aztec experienced the night. For us, tonight is essentially the same as last night. The dark is the dark. We might note the phase of the moon or the weather, but the night itself has no particular character assigned to it by the calendar. For the Aztec, every night was different, not in the meteorological sense, not just a matter of whether it rained, but in the most fundamental sense. Each night had a different sovereign, a different quality of darkness, a different divine presence moving through it, carrying its particular character, its specific omens, its specific gifts or dangers. If you were born on a night governed by Tlaloc, the rain god, your night birth carried Tlaloc's influence. The deep waters, the mountains, the monsoon. If your night belonged to Tezcatlipoca, the goddess of rivers and lakes, your darkness was the darkness of still water and reflection. If it was Mictlantecutli's night, the lord of the dead, then the darkness was the darkness of Mictlan, the deep underworld, the place of bone and dust and endings. The night was not a single undifferentiated thing. It was a rotating committee of 9 powers, 9 different flavors of dark, cycling through time with the precision of a cosmic mechanism, each with its own character and demand. Night was, in the Aztec reckoning, complex as the world it covered, and among the 9 lords is the one who is the heart of them all, the one for whom the night is not merely a domain but a total identity, the 8th lord in the cycle. His name is Tezcatlipoca, and before I tell you his stories, I want you to picture him, because the way he looks is itself a theology. His face is painted black, with a horizontal band of yellow crossing his eyes, the colours of night and of the deep earth. His body carries the markings of the jaguar, the spots that are also the stars, the pattern of the night sky rendered as skin. His left foot is gone. In its place, depending on the image, there is a snake, or an obsidian mirror, or simply the void where the foot should be, a wound that has been transformed into a symbol, a loss that has become a source of power. He lost the foot in the act of creation, when he used it as bait for the great earth monster, Tezcatlipoca, who snapped it off. The foot is gone. He wears the absence proudly. Or rather, he doesn't wear it as anything. It simply is. The way the dark simply is. Not compensated for. Not hidden. Not replaced with something more comfortable. And on his chest, or sometimes held in his hand, the obsidian mirror. Black volcanic glass, Tezcatl, polished to a surface so perfect it reflects everything. The mirror that smokes. And in the smoke, everything is visible. Every deed, every thought, every secret that any human being has ever carried. He is omniscient in the way that the dark itself seems omniscient, seeing everything precisely because he cannot himself be seen. He was the god of the night sky. He was the god of the night wind. He carried the name Yohuali Ehecatl, the night wind, a name that describes exactly the particular quality of his presence. Invisible, cold, everywhere at once, arriving without warning and vanishing without trace. He was a creator god, one of 4 brothers who made the universe. He was a destroyer. He ended worlds when they had run their course. He was a trickster and a sorcerer, the patron of warriors, of sorcerers, of the young. He incited sinful behavior and then punished or pardoned the sinners. He was the force of conflict, of the fruitful, necessary conflict that drives change. His animal was the jaguar. At night, truly dark nights in the forests of Mexico, before electricity, a jaguar is not visible. You cannot see it, but you can feel it. You know, in some precognitive part of your nervous system, that something is there, that the dark has a quality of presence it doesn't have when nothing living is moving through it. The hairs lift, the breath shortens. Something in you that has been paying attention longer than your conscious mind has been conscious says, there is something here. That is Tezcatlipoca, the night that watches you. There is a story about Tezcatlipoca and the great feathered serpent god Quetzalcoatl, his brother, his rival, his opposite, that I want to tell you because it captures something essential about what the smoking mirror is. Quetzalcoatl, in this story, was the priest king of Tula, the great Toltec city. He was a good king, devoted to his people and to truth, a priest of impeccable virtue. He did not permit human sacrifice. Under his rule, the crops grew tall and the people thrived. He was the kind of king that myths imagine from a great distance, the golden age, the righteous ruler, the ideal made flesh. Tezcatlipoca came to him. He came in disguise, as a humble wanderer, or as a physician, or simply as a stranger at the gate who asked for an audience. He was not recognizable as a god. He was just a person with a mirror. He showed a mirror to Quetzalcoatl. "Look," he said, and Quetzalcoatl looked into the smoking mirror and saw himself as he actually was. Not as the virtuous priest king, not as the figure of his own ideals, but as a mortal man, old, worn, marked by time, carrying all the small failures and compromises and self-deceptions that accumulate over a long life. Not the pristine image he had carried of himself, the truth. The sight of it undid him. He could not live inside the gap between what he had believed himself to be and what the mirror showed him. Tezcatlipoca gave him pulque, the fermented agave drink, and Quetzalcoatl, in his devastation, drank. He broke his vows. He disgraced himself. He exiled himself from Tula in shame, walking east toward the sea, disappearing over the horizon. You could read this as a story about how the forces of darkness corrupt the good, how the night undoes the achievements of the day, how Tezcatlipoca is simply the villain of the piece. But I don't think that's right. The mirror showed Quetzalcoatl the truth, not a lie, not a distortion. The truth, the actual, unadorned reality of what he was, stripped of all the idealizations he had built around himself over years of being told he was a golden king. The darkness has that quality. In the dark, when the daytime distractions have fallen away, when there is nothing to look at except your own thoughts, what do you see? The night is the hour of honest reckoning. Not only frightening things, sometimes true things, sometimes the things we needed to see and had been avoiding, things that the brightness of the day and the business of living had been successfully keeping at bay. The smoking mirror does not corrupt. It reflects. This is the final quality of the night that tonight's stories have been building toward. The night is the oldest thing. It is the primordial ground from which light emerged. It is the body that holds the sun during its hours of vulnerability. It is the horse's breath that leaves dew on the grass. It is the hymn that asks to be held. It is the guardian of the threshold. And it is the mirror, the dark that sees clearly, the dark that shows us what the day is too bright to reveal. And tonight, right now, it is here with you, all 9 of its faces, all 9 of its qualities. The ground and the body and the breath and the protection and the threshold and the mirror, all present at once. Because the night is all of these things simultaneously, has always been all of these things simultaneously, has been waiting since before the world existed to be all of these things for whoever lay down in the dark and was willing to receive it. 9 stories, 9 faces of the dark, from the primordial waters of ancient Hermopolis, where Kuk and Kauket drifted in the formless dark before the world existed, before light had been thought of, before even the gods who would think of it had been born, from the mud and the frog and the snake-headed goddess and the lotus that rose from their darkness to become the first sun, to Erebus, the deep darkness that fills the hollows of the earth, the father of light and day, the dark that carries the seed of its own opposite, the darkness from which brightness is born, the underground presence that Nyx draws up each evening and wears like a cloak, to Nyx, cloaked in stars, riding her chariot across the sky, while even Zeus stands back from her door, she who mothered sleep and death and fate and dreams and strife and nemesis and old age and the very fates themselves, who contains within her all the things the night contains, the peaceful and the terrifying equally, the restorative and the final alike. To Hun, the Lakota spirit of darkness, pre-existent to everything, banished underground and recalled, cycling back every evening as part of the ancient arrangement that keeps the world from being too hot or too cold, too bright or too dark. The darkness integrated into the order of things rather than overcome by it. To Nótt, arching over the earth with her star-covered body, swallowing the sun and carrying it safely through the long dark hours to be born again at dawn. The night as a body that holds what needs to be held. The sky as a mother who does not let go. She under whose image the ancient dead were laid to rest, in the trust that the same passage that carries the sun would carry them. To Nótt, riding her black horse, Hrimfaxi, in an eternal circuit. Her son Darga chasing her, and never quite catching her. And the dew that falls from her horse's bit the evidence every morning that she was here, that the night happened, that she carried it across the sky as she has always done, and left her signature on every surface she touched. To Ratri, the Vedic goddess of the single hymn, who comes with her 1,000 eyes and wraps the world in her arms and asks only to be trusted, who holds the sleeping the way a tree holds the birds that have settled in it, not making the forest safe, but making the resting possible. To Breksta, the Lithuanian guardian of 3 thresholds, the sky's threshold, the day's threshold, and the dreaming threshold, who stood at the moment when the day released you and is still standing there, still watching, still tending the crossing between waking and sleep. To Tezcatlipoca and his 9 lords, sovereign and terrible and true, the smoking mirror that sees everything, the jaguar in the dark that you cannot see but can feel, the night that is not simply the absence of day, but a rotating company of powers, each with its own character, each with its own demand, each offering the particular quality of dark that it alone can offer. I have been thinking, in preparing this journey for you, about what it means that these 9 figures, from 9 different traditions on 5 different continents, separated by thousands of years and thousands of miles, all point toward the same thing. The dark is not empty. It never has been. Every human culture that has ever tried to make sense of the night has understood, at some level, that there is something here, something that was here before us and will be here after us, something that the day cannot contain and that cannot be reduced to the absence of something else. The darkness is a presence, and the Nightbringers are its names. We have spent most of human history honoring these names, praying to them, building temples to them, writing hymns that have survived 4,000 years, carving their images into volcanic stone, and pressing them into clay, and painting them on the ceilings of burial chambers, so that the dead would look up and see them and know, you are not alone in this dark. Someone is here. Someone has always been here. We have, in the last few hundred years, with our electricity and our screens and our ability to push the dark back to the edges of things, largely stopped doing this. But the dark itself hasn't changed. It is still what it always was, the ground of everything, the body that holds the sun, the guardian of the sleeping world, the mirror that sees clearly, the ancient alternation that makes the day possible by being what the day is born from. I told you at the beginning that I never travel the thin places alone, that there are others, figures who have been tending the crossings for longer than any story I know how to tell. Now you have met the first of them, the ones who carry the night in. And the night, as you know now, is not empty. It is not simply the absence of the day. It is a vast and ancient presence, holding within it everything that the day cannot contain. The darkness that makes creation possible. The body that carries the sun through its hours of vulnerability. The dew left by a horse's breath. The prayer of a sage who trusted the dark to keep him. The obsidian mirror that sees what we have been too bright to see. There are more thin places to visit, more threshold tenders to meet. The ones who bring sleep, the ones who send dreams, the ones who stand at the boundary of death itself and hold the crossing open. We will go to all of them. But tonight the night is here, and the Nightbringers are at their work, and you are exactly where you are supposed to be. Kuk is in the deep places, formless and patient, the darkness that makes creation possible. Nyx is riding her chariot overhead, trailing her veil of stars, powerful enough that even Zeus steps back. Nótt's horse is passing somewhere above you, and the dew is already forming. Ratri is watching with her 1,000 eyes. Breksta stood at the threshold when the day ended and is still standing there. And somewhere in the dark, Tezcatlipoca's obsidian mirror is reflecting something true. Let your breath slow. Let your body be held. Let the dark do what it has always done, what it was doing before you were born, and will do long after you are gone, which is to hold the world in its ancient arms and carry it through the hours of darkness toward the morning. You are in good company. You always have been. Sleep well.